Hey everybody, welcome back to Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com and here on the YouTube channel. And today is a really special day. We have the thing that you guys have been asking me about on all the live streams and in comments of our other videos about the Trinnov. You've been asking me about the Trinnov NOVA, the new Nova. Since I did the ST2 PRO videos, I've been telling you for months now, we're going to get a Nova in here so we can talk about it, and we have one here today in this box. So what we're going to do in today's video, it's going to be a little bit of a longer video. What we're going to do is we're going to unbox the Nova. We're going to take a look at it, and then we're going to compare. I'm going to compare and explain to you the differences between the Nova and the ST2 PRO. What are the main key features that are different and upgraded in the Nova? Should you go out and upgrade your ST2 PRO to a Nova or not? And we're going to talk about all of that today. So if you're interested in room correction and optimization and you're looking for the king of the room correction system, the Trinnov NOVA is something you want to stick around for. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell, because after this video, there's going to be about 4 or 5 other videos that we're going to talk about later, where we're going to walk through everything from installation of the Nova, the application, how you calibrate your room. We're going to talk about the microphone, the remote. We're going to do a whole series of videos around the Trinnov NOVA. So make sure you hit that notification bell. Okay, so here we are. So on the bottom here, you'll see that I have my ST2 PRO that I disconnected. And we have the Nova here in the box so we can compare the physical sizes as well. Now, before we get started, let me say this. First and foremost, this is not a sponsored video. Trinnov is not paying me for these series of videos. Trinnov did not give me a free Nova. This is on loan. I have to send it back unless I plan to buy it, which I'm going to. And as you know, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you know that I paid for my original ST2 PRO, full price. Had no working relationship with Trinnov prior to buying the ST2 PRO. We developed this working relationship after I bought the ST2 PRO and told them how much I really loved it and shared that with you. There are 2 videos on the channel that I will link in the description box below that show the unboxing of the ST2 PRO, and then the second video where I talked about the sound differences between the Trinnov optimization and room correction and SonarWorks. So go check those videos. The links will be in the description box below. So let's get out of the way. It's not a sponsored video, okay? For people that are new to the channel, I'm telling you the honest truth about this stuff and my experiences with it. So let's get that out of the way. Okay, so I disconnected my ST2 PRO. Here it is. Here is the Nova in this box right here. Let's unbox it, and I'll get some iPhone video out here, and let's talk a little bit about the Nova. Let's see what it looks like. Let's see what we get in the box. So if we take it out of the box here, okay, hopefully this is I'm gonna get some iPhone footage here for you. I'm gonna show you what comes in the box. So when you get your Nova, here's what comes in the box. You have the Nova in this little nice velvet bag here in a box. We have some instructions up here, and we have a power cable and an Ethernet cable down here as well. So that's what it looks like when it is unboxed here, okay? So let's go ahead and let me take it out of the box quickly. Let's get this out of the box, and we have a set of documentation in here as well. So you'll be able to get a hold of all of that. I'm going to close this and get it out of the way. All right. Let's get that out of the way. So here's the Nova, comes in a bag, just like this. We're going to open this up. It's got a little Velcro closure on here. So we're going to take it out of the bag. And here is the Nova, sitting on top of the ST2 PRO. Let me get some footage of this so you can see this with the iPhone, the size, the physical differences between these 2 units. So there is the back of the ST2 PRO. Here is the Nova up flush against the front of the ST2 PRO. So there we go. So you can see from a different angle here, the depth differences between these 2 units, okay? Right here, we're gonna talk all about the connections and everything else here in a second. So the ST2 PRO, when I unboxed it, if you remember that video, we talked about one of the things. It's a big computer. It's exactly what it is. It's an old style PC computer from about 10-15 years ago. It is extremely heavy. I don't know what the exact weight is, but it probably weighs anywhere between 25 and 30 pounds if I had to guess. Okay, it's got a big computer, and it's huge. Now it is rack mountable, and it also has 4 large big feet that you can sit on top of a rack, which is what I did with mine. Okay, in comparison, The Nova is about the size, depth, and weight of a standard audio interface. That's the difference. It's rack mountable, just like the ST2 Pro is, but it's a fraction of the size. It looks like a modern, any standard audio interface. That's what it is. So right out of the box, you have a unit that's a lot smaller, it's a lot lighter, means it's portable, which is a huge feature. If you're someone who goes to different studios and works on the road, having a Trinnov in different mixing rooms is a huge benefit, because you can calibrate the room in less than 5 minutes. We're gonna talk about that in the next video when you see me do it here. But what's great about this is you can take this thing anywhere, right? You can take it anywhere. This you can take anywhere as well, but it's a lot more bulky, a lot more fragile, if you will. So it's not as easy to cart around, and you'd probably be a lot less excited to move the ST2 Pro as you would the Nova. So there's the physical differences right out of the gate in the weight. Now I have a bunch of notes here on my computer that I want to read. I want to make sure I hit all of these points. There's about 12 different key features, if you will. The main features in the Nova that are upgraded and or added to the Nova that were not part of the ST2 Pro, and I want to go over those with you now. So when we talk about the physical weight and size, we talk about how the Nova is really a computer, and that's really what it is. On the ST2 Pro, again, it's an old style, typical PC Windows kind of computer. You can think of it that way. Has fans in it, has large power supplies, large PC boards, memory, all the things you would think about in a desktop PC from back in the good old days. The Nova is also a computer, but the computer boards inside of the Nova are similar to what you would find in an iPad or an iPhone or a tablet of some kind. That's the kind of computer processing hardware that's inside this box. So there's no fans, there's no massive power supplies. That's why they're able to shrink it down and make it a lot lighter, because of the technology has improved over the last 12 years. When I think the ST2 Pro was released about 12 years ago, roughly 10 to 12 years ago, fast forward 12 years, all the same stuff that you see in a watch or an iPad or an iPhone, that's the kind of technology from a computer standpoint that's inside of this Nova. So that's why one of the ways that it's different in how they can make it smaller and lighter than the ST2 Pro. Now let's talk about the third point here, which is the price of entry for one of these. So if you remember when we bought the ST2 Pro and you saw that unboxing video, the ST2 Pro, along with the Trinnov microphone that you need to do the calibration, was around $5,600 is what I paid for my ST2 Pro with the microphone, okay? And that's the average street price for the ST2 Pro. The Nova comes in at Sweetwater, and again, I'll link everything in the description box below. Sweetwater now carries the Trinnov product line, which is great. So if you're thinking about getting a Trinnov, please use that link in the description box. It really does help me out. The current price for the Nova with the microphone is $4,190. So let's say $4,200. So it's about $1,400 or so lower in price than the ST2 Pro. Okay, so the Nova is a little less expensive to get in. They've made this thing so it's more scalable, and we're going to talk about those features in a second. So just to get in to the Nova or the Trinnov ecosystem with a Nova, it's cheaper than what it was with the ST2 Pro. And there's more features here as well, which we're going to talk about. Okay, so again, check out the link in the description box below. So now let's talk about some of the things that the Nova has that the ST2 Pro does not have. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm just going to I'm going to just point it out. I'm going to tell you about it, and I'm going to point it out with the iPhone so you can see it. So first and foremost, on the Nova, we have now 6 analog inputs, 3 pairs or 6 analog inputs. On the ST2 Pro, there are only 2 analog inputs. Let me show you that here. So here's the back of the Nova. We have 2 XLR analog inputs and 4 1/4-inch analog inputs, okay? On the ST2 Pro down here, we only have 4. So we have 4 on the ST2 Pro, not 2, excuse me, 4 on the ST2 Pro, analog inputs. We have 6 on the Nova. So the idea is adding those extra inputs. You can do stuff like 5.1 sound. If you have a system like that, you can hook up different analog components to your Nova. You can have your main ones for your studio monitor, your studio interface or monitors, and then you can have some extra inputs for things like I don't know, a turntable or some other kind of audio system. But you can have more inputs on the Nova. So that's one added feature. There are more inputs. Okay, the second thing is the Nova has 3 pairs of analog outs for 3 pairs of studio monitors, whereas the ST2 Pro only has 2. Okay, let me show you that. So on the back of the Nova here, you'll see we have 6 XLR outs, analog outs, okay? For speakers, or 3 pairs of speakers, okay? On the ST2 Pro, down here, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can only hook up 2 pairs of speakers. Okay? Or the way I'm running the ST2 Pro, let me shut that off. The way I'm running the ST2 Pro is I would have my 2 main focals in analog outputs 1 and 2, and my focal sub in analog output 3. Which means on my ST2 Pro, I only have 1 additional analog output, so I couldn't even use a second set of studio monitors if I wanted to. On the Nova, you have 3 pairs or 6 analog outs. So you can have 2 pairs of satellite speakers. You can have 3 pairs of satellite speakers, let's say if you weren't running a sub, or you can have 2 pairs of satellite speakers, and then you can use one of those the third set of analog outs, you can use one of those for a subwoofer, or if you had 2 subwoofers or whatever. You have a much more configurable setup here. You have just a whole nother pair of outputs that you can use, which is really, really great. So that's another improvement. Now, I will tell you about the Nova, the difference between the Nova and the ST2 Pro when we talk about the analog outputs. So again, one of the ways that they were able to make this Nova a little bit cheaper, getting in at the bottom floor, at the entry point, again, we talked about the computering, the size and the weight and all of that, but the other way they were able to do it is right out of the box, the Nova only comes with the 1 license for 1 pair of analog outs. So you say, well, what does that mean? Okay, so what that means is in the Nova, we have they have a license, a software license that's tied to each pair of the analog outputs. So think about it as if you wanted to maximize all 3 analog outputs, you would have to have 3 software licenses. You get one when you buy the Nova, right out of the box. And then if you want to add a second set of speakers and or a third set of speakers, you need to buy a software license for each pair of those. So that would mean 2 additional licenses, okay? So in each one of those licenses is roughly $1,000 US. Okay, so we said, well, the Nova starts at about $1,400, less cost than the ST2 Pro did. That is true, but you only get 1 set of analog outputs that can be used with the room correction and optimization algorithm inside of the Trinnov, where if you want the additional set of speakers, you spend $1,000, now you have 2 extra pair of speakers. Now you have 2 pairs of analog outs or 4 separate analog outs where you can use the room optimization and correction. If you spend an additional $1,000 on top of that, now you can have 3 sets of speakers, right? With the room optimization and correction. On the ST2 Pro, it's more money up front. You only get 2 sets of speakers, as I said, and both of those you're able to use the room optimization and correction. Okay, does that make sense? So if you're someone who has a small system, you're only using 1 set of main monitors, you only need the entry-level Trinnov because you get the license for the first pair. Now here's something that's a little bit special about this. Here's a note that we have here, okay? Even though you only get 1 license for 1 pair or 2 of the analog outs on the Nova, you also have the ability, you can still plug in your second set of speakers or your third set of speakers into those additional outputs. The outputs will physically work, but you won't be able to use the full room correction and calibration optimization algorithm. It will just be, it will be untreated, okay? So, for example, although those second and third pair of speakers will have the level adjustment and the time delay adjustment, which we'll talk about in another video. So it has some of the processing, but not the full room correction, okay? So think about this for a second. What does that mean? It may sound a little confusing. So let's say you get the Nova right out of the box and you just have the one license. You have your main set of speakers. Like me behind me, I have my main focals. My main focals plug into analog outputs 1 and 2. I have the full room correction, the full algorithm, all the calibration inside of the Trinnov that comes stock with the entry price of the Nova. I can plug in a second set of speakers to output 3 and 4, and I can switch between them. And maybe that second set of speakers is a small little set of computer monitors or really crappy speakers where I don't really care too much about the room correction and all that. I just want a quick reference at a different level. That's not my main mixing speaker, let me say it that way. I can still use those outputs. You just won't have the room correction in there. So depending on your setup and what you need, you may not care about that. You may not need that extra set of speakers, set 2, speaker set 3, and have the room correction and optimization on all 3 sets. You may just want them on your main speakers. So the physical outputs will still work, audio will still pass through it. You just won't have the whole Trinnov treatment, if you will. Does that make sense? Again, if it's unclear, leave questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them, but that's the way it works. You can buy those additional licenses at any time. You don't need to buy them when you first buy the Trinnov. If you buy the Trinnov, you get the 1 set of speakers with the room correction and optimization. 6 months down the road, you say, you know what, I want to add the second set. You just call up the dealer of the wherever you bought your Nova. You can purchase that license for right around $1,000 US. Again, check current pricing with your dealer, and they'll activate inside the box. It's all done with software. You'll activate those second set of outputs, and now you'll have 2 outputs where you can do your room correction and optimization, and all of that stuff is downloaded. Your licenses are all downloaded through the Trinnov desktop application, which we're going to talk about in the next video, and I'm going to show you how to install the application, how to download the additional licenses for the Nova, so you can see how it's done. It's really, really simple. It's about as simple as it can get, okay? So the Nova is more, from an analog output point of view, is scalable, where the ST2 Pro wasn't. Whatever you bought with the ST2 Pro, it had 2 sets of outputs and that's it. There's no expandability, there's no licenses to buy, and that's why it costs more. So you don't need to spend as much money on the front end because you may not need those additional licenses. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So that's a big point there. Okay, let me see here. Also, when we talk about the speaker outputs, the ST2 Pro has those 2 sets of speaker outputs. The Nova has 3 sets. But the difference between the Nova and the ST2 Pro is inside of the desktop application for the Nova, which we're going to see in another video, and or the remote, the La remote, which I'll show you in a bit, you can switch between those sets of speakers like a traditional monitor controller. So the Nova is not only room correction and optimization, it is also a monitor controlling system. The ST2 Pro is not, okay? So with the ST2 Pro, even if I hooked up 2 sets of speakers that come straight out of the box, in their application for the ST2 Pro, you had to create different presets. You couldn't just easily on the fly switch between your speakers. It really wasn't designed to do that. There were some workarounds to do it, but it wasn't a seamless system. On the Nova, it is. The Nova is truly a monitor control system, which makes it really, really nice. So not only are you getting the room correction and optimization, but you are now getting a complete monitor control system that is completely configurable, 7 ways to Sunday. We're gonna look at that in another video on the new software app. You could do it directly from the app on your computer, or you can get the La remote, which with the hardware remote, and you can do it hands-on tactile. Okay, that's another feature of the Nova that the ST2 Pro does not have, and that's huge. It's like having 2 pieces of gear in one, which is the reason why I'm buying the Nova, for that feature alone. Okay, so now let's talk about what else the Nova has. The Nova also has a digital output, AES output here. The ST2 Pro has that as well. Let me show you that here. So here on the Nova, we have the AES out. We also have SPDIF out and ADAT. On the ST2 Pro, we only have the XLR digital outs. There is no SPDIF or ADAT, I don't believe. No, there's not, okay? So there's the differences there. okay? We also have, let's see here. The other thing the Nova has, which is new, that the ST2 Pro doesn't have, is Dante. Okay, so now you also have Dante. So if you want to run audio over Ethernet and you have a Dante system or thinking about upgrading your studio to a Dante system at one point, the Nova is already ready to go straight out of the box. You don't get that in the ST2 Pro, okay? That's another feature. I don't know what number we're up to here. I think we're up to number 8. Number 9, the Nova has a much improved desktop application for the room correction process over the ST2 Pro. I'm sure there'll be a couple of images showing you some screenshots of it. We're going to do a separate video on that, but I can tell you just from looking at it, the user interface and application for the Nova is far better, far more intuitive, far easier to use than the one for the ST2 Pro. Okay, far better, and we'll see that in another video. It makes it dead simple with the Nova. The ST2 Pro, simple, but you got to kind of know your way around it. You may be a little bit turned off by it because it looks like an application from like the 1980s. It looks like something an IT guy would be working on. This one is much more graphical, kind of like stuff you would see on an iPad or most modernized user interfaces, and it works flawlessly, and we're going to look at that in another video. But that's another improvement. Another huge improvement, a little creature comfort, but I think it's kind of big on the Nova that the ST2 Pro does not have. What you might not be able to see here because it's not plugged in, but on the front of the Nova here, let me try to see if we can focus that here. There's a little Trinnov logo. And really what that is that is an LED. And it's an LED that changes colors. So you can easily just look at your Nova in the rack and you can see what status the Nova is in. So if it's the color blue, I believe it's blue, that means everything, the room correction is turned on, it's enabled, and everything is working fine. You don't need to worry about anything. You don't need to open up the desktop application. You could just look at the Nova and see the status of it. If it's amber or orange, it means I believe that it's in bypass mode. Okay, that you bypass the application or bypass the room correction, which you could turn it on, turn it off if you want to hear the before and after. Again, we'll do that in the next video. And then if it is flashing red, that means that the Nova, the room correction is not on, it's not working, and you need to go ahead and you need to take a look, open up your desktop application, maybe reboot the application. Something went wrong and your room correction and optimization is not functioning. Okay, so that's really cool. On the ST2 Pro, you don't have that. The only way to know whether it's actually on or not is to have the desktop application open and look at the bypass button and make sure that it's on. Okay, the other thing is that the ST2 Pro, because it's kind of an old style PC, it's kind of like those old computers where every so often you got to shut them down and reboot them, where you don't need to do that on the Nova. You can leave it on all the time, like an audio interface. Okay, so that's another cool little feature that's an improvement on the Nova. The Nova also has a headphone jack on it, which does not have on the ST2 Pro if you were to need that. Let's see, that's number 10. Number 11, if you use the Nova with their remote called the La Remote, which is extra. Let me get the La Remote here out of the box. Let me show you what the La Remote looks like here. Okay, so it comes in one of these little boxes here. This is either the microphone or the remote. This is the microphone. We'll talk about that in a second. Here is the La Remote. So the La Remote is this little, you can probably hold it up to the camera right here so you can maybe see it right here. Hopefully that'll focus. There is the La Remote. Okay, you plug it in to your Nova with a USB cable that is supplied. And what this remote does, as I said earlier, it is a complete monitor controller with the Nova. Okay, it's a little monitor controller. Think of like the Avocet controllers, but way, way smaller. And the other benefit to this new La Remote, it is completely configurable. Where when you use this with the ST2 Pro, and you could, the way it was kind of programmed at the factory, there were a couple of things that you can change, like the dim level and the mute level and stuff like that, but you couldn't set it up like a monitor controller and switch between speaker sets and all of that stuff. Some of that stuff you can do, but it was way more limited with the Nova. It is 100% configurable. Okay, so here again, here is the La Remote. Okay, which is cool. This runs about $1,000. It's not part of the package. It's a separate, it's an add-on that you could buy at any time. Again, link will be in the description box below for Sweetwater if you want to check that out. What I love about this thing is really the size of it. Again, I'll hold it up to the camera here. The size of this thing is perfect. It's not a huge monitor controller like the popular Crane Song Avocet. That's a pretty big controller. This is half the size of that. So this is well built, all made out of metal, nothing plastic here. Has a nice volume control, main volume control, which feels really good. It's detented. It's got a talk back on here for using it in a control room. It has an LCD screen, the whole thing. The law remote is pretty cool. And again, we're gonna do a series of videos on how to use the law remote with the Nova, how to configure all your speaker systems. You could do a whole bunch of different things that you could not do with the ST2 Pro. So if you already have a monitor controller and you're thinking about getting a Trinnov, you can eliminate 2 pieces of gear and do it all inside of one, which is really, really cool. And then the last thing here, the last main point is the microphone has been upgraded, and it has been made in a way that makes the whole calibration process, your first original calibration in your room, way, way easier. So if you did not see the microphone in the unboxing video I did about 6 or 8 months ago for the ST2 Pro, here's the microphone. It looks exactly the same. It doesn't look any different. Let me show it to you. Again, it comes in this beautiful box with this little padded case. It's got this protective cover here. Let me show you that. Hold it up to the camera. Hopefully it'll focus for you. Focus, there it is. Okay, let me move it down here. It's got this little plastic cover. And what makes this microphone unique here, and this system unique in the way it's measured, let me again hold this up here on the side cam so you can see it. Come on now, focus. Is the 4 capsules, microphone capsules that are on the top. Now this looks exactly the same as the old one does. The difference is, on this one there are 2 main differences. Number one, there is no battery inside of this one like the old one, where you had to turn the old one on and turn the old one off manually. And you had to do that in a very specific sequence when you're doing your calibration process for the first time. You have to make sure you turn it on and turn it off in a very specific order to make sure you don't get a feedback loop. It's not hard, but it's, you know, you can screw it up. This one doesn't. This has a battery. It's built right inside, and it's powered through the Ethernet cable. This has an Ethernet plug on the bottom. Let me see if I can show you that. Hopefully it'll focus. Okay. Where the old one had a special, I think it was an 8-pin DIN connector, and on the other side of the cable was XLR connectors that plugged into the back of the ST2 Pro when you go through the calibration process. This microphone plugs right from the microphone, Ethernet, right into the front of the Nova. There's an Ethernet port right on the front of the Nova here. So what does that mean? That means that you don't need to unplug your speakers from the back of your Nova to do your calibration like you did with the ST2 Pro. Again, not a big deal, but you had to unconnect all your inputs, plug in your microphone, run those XLR connectors to the back of the ST2 Pro. So you have to get behind your rack, plug in the XLRs, go through the process, make sure that you turn this on and turn this off the way you're supposed to. The whole process took about 5 or maybe 6 minutes to do your whole calibration process with the ST2 Pro. With the Nova, all your speakers stay hooked up. You plug the microphone into the front of the Nova. The application will walk you through it, and it really happens in about 2 minutes. You don't have to worry about, did I turn it on? Did I turn it off? Did I do something out of order? None of that has to be worried about, because the new application is smart enough to take you through the process and do everything right. Whereas with the ST2 Pro, it's a little bit more manual. Again, improvement, yes. Creature comfort, yes. Makes it easier and more seamless, absolutely. But the microphone itself looks the same, and from a quality point of view, it's exactly the same. It's a high-end quality microphone. This comes with the Nova at that $4,100 or $4,200 price tag at Sweetwater. You, however, can buy the Nova by itself, and you can buy this separately. This is about a $700 item. So you can buy this for about just the Nova. You can buy that for about, I think, $3,600 or so, give or take. Again, check Sweetwater. Links will be in the description box if you did not want to buy the microphone. Now you may say, well, Dave, why wouldn't you want to buy the microphone? And here's another question that comes up. Can I use any measurement microphone with the Nova? No, you have to use this. Then you say to yourself, well, if I have to use it and I have to buy the microphone, why do we sell the Nova and the microphone separately? Why can't you just buy the Nova? Simple. Let's say you have multiple mixing rooms in your studio. You only need one microphone, right? You don't need to buy the microphone. If you have 3 mixing rooms and you have 3 Novas in each one of your mixing rooms, permanently installed for larger studios, you don't need 3 microphones. You only need one. Okay, so that's why you could buy it separately if you had more than one system in your studio. But for most people watching this, you probably don't have that, so you're going to buy the Nova with the microphone. So this comes as a package for that $4,200 or $4,190, whatever it is, but you can buy them separate. So those are the 12 main differences in feature upgrades from the Nova, or from the ST2 Pro to the Nova. Now, I got a couple other notes here that I want to share with you when we talk about the Trinnov system in general, and specifically to the Nova. The number one question that I'm going to be asked, so I'm going to answer it right now, is that, Dave, is there a sound improvement difference or a better calibration optimization process in the Nova from the ST2 Pro? In other words, is it going to sound any different than what your ST2 Pro sounded like? The answer to that question, and I've confirmed this with Trinnov, is absolutely not. Okay? The sound is going to be the same. The algorithm and the way that they did the room correction and optimization in the ST2 Pro and all their other high-end products, they have stuff for home theater, for Dolby rooms, all those algorithms and the way they do the room correction in the ST2 Pro and all of the other high-end products that Trinnov offers and the Nova is exactly the same. It doesn't sound any different. Okay, so when we talk about should you upgrade from an ST2 Pro, if you're an ST2 Pro user, should you upgrade to the Nova? Is there a reason to do it? And here's what I would say to you. If you have an ST2 Pro and you're happy with the sound, obviously you have it and you love the way it sounds and you don't need all the additional features that we just spoke about, then no, you don't need to upgrade to a Nova. There's really no reason to. However, if you have, because the sound is exactly the same. However, if you have an ST2 Pro and you like some of the features that come with the Nova that we talked about, and for me, the big one and the reason why I'm selling my ST2 Pro and buying a Nova, here's the main reason. The law remote with full monitor controller, to be able to switch between multiple sets of speakers in different configurations, to be able to do that all from the law remote, that is huge. To me, that in and of itself is great. And now that I have, on the Nova, you have the 3 sets of speakers as opposed to just the 2 sets of speakers. That's really cool because you can do things like, and we'll do this in the next video, okay? 1 set of main speakers with my subwoofer, then I want to have the 2nd set of speakers with that same subwoofer, right? So I can listen to my main vocals with my sub, I can listen to my secondary speakers with my sub, or not. However you want to configure it, it's completely configurable. Maybe you don't want to listen to the sub on the 2nd set of speakers, only on your mains. Maybe you just want to take the sub in and out and listen to your speakers with and without a sub. All of that can be done from the law remote at a touch of a button. You can configure it any way you want, okay? So you have more flexibility. That's the huge feature for me personally, okay? But for you, that may not be a big deal, but for you, Dante might be a big deal, okay? Dante doesn't come in the ST2 Pro, that would be a reason to upgrade. Maybe you're someone who travels and goes around to different studios. Moving this thing around is way better than moving this thing around. Believe me, this is way more fragile. This has to be treated like a delicate desktop PC. This doesn't. That's another reason. But from a sound point of view, they are 100% identical, okay? And that comes from Trinnov, just so you know that. Okay, let's see. Here's another feature about the Nova, which is great, which also could have been done with the ST2 Pro, to be honest, but for people that are new to Trinnov and you want to know what's another reason why I should have a Trinnov over something like a SonarWorks software system. The other great thing about the Trinnov products in general, and with the Nova, is when it's hooked up to your network, Trinnov can log into your system and help you in tech support for you, because it's tied to your network with an Ethernet cable with a serial number and a license number, with a serial number and a license number. This microphone is tied to this specific box, right? So if you're having some issues or you're having some problems or you have some questions or something doesn't sound right to you for some reason and you need tech support from Trinnov, they can go in underneath the hood, they can get into your app, because the application has a user-friendly, like a basic mode and a more advanced mode. So if you want to get in there and start tweaking a bunch of stuff, and we're going to look at that in another video, but Trinnov can get in there and help you with that. You can't do that with something like SonarWorks. Okay, so that's another benefit, but that also could have happened with the ST2 Pro, but I wanted to share that benefit with you. Okay, why, you know, because this is an expensive system. SonarWorks is $100 or $200. This is what, $4,000 to $5,000. Right? Well, that's one of the benefits too. You can have them log in and can help work with you on your system and tweak it and help you dial it in remotely if you need that. Okay, the other thing, that is it. Okay, I talked about the optimization and the correction on the Nova and on the ST2 Pro are exactly the same. So I know that was a lot of information. I'll try to timestamp some of this stuff below, but you can go back and rewatch it. Now in future videos, we are going to do a video, like 3 or 4 different videos. The next video you're going to see is how I actually install it, hook up the speakers, and actually do the room calibration and optimization process using the new application so I can show you how easy it is. I'm going to show you in that video how to download and unlock your additional speaker output licenses if you choose to do that. Again, it's really, really simple. And we're going to go through that whole process. So we'll have one dedicated video. I got my Nova. How do I get it set up in my room? We're going to do that video. Video after that is we're actually going to put the application from the ST2 Pro on the screen and from the Nova on the screen. I'm going to be able to show you the differences and show you why the Nova application is so much more user-friendly and all the things that you can do with it that you could not do with the ST2 Pro. So you can kind of see the differences, because if you've never seen the ST2 Pro in person or up front, never used it, you don't know. Okay, I'm fortunate enough to have the both systems in here that we can put them side by side and show you the application and all the things you can do around that. Then we're going to do a video, on the Law remote. We're going to do a whole series of videos. I don't know how many, but at least a couple on this remote, how we hook it up to the Nova, how we can configure it as a monitor controller with a couple of pair of speakers and all the different combinations to show you the power of this thing. Again, it's an additional cost to this, but this thing is really, really cool. And we're going to show you how to do that. And then the 4th video, we're actually going to do a live stream where we're going to bring Antoine from Trinnov, my contact at Trinnov, who has been so gracious and really been helping me for the last 6 months, ever since I hooked up with him after I told him how much I love the ST2 Pro. He's actually going to do a live stream on the channel. We're going to schedule it so you guys know when it's coming, so you can actually ask questions about the Trinnov directly to the guy who works there, who helped design this thing and understands all that techie geek stuff that good old Uncle Dave doesn't even understand. I only told you a fraction of what this thing can really do, and those are the main differences. But if you want to know a little bit deeper dive and you want to hear it from one of the designers at Trinnov themselves, Antoine is going to come on and he's going to do a video with me as well. So there's going to be at least 4 more videos around the Nova and the Trinnov system. So make sure you hit that notification bell if you're someone new to the channel, okay? Because you're not going to know when I post these videos. It's going to come out every couple of weeks from the publishing of this video. And then the last thing I'll say about the room correction, and again, you can go back and watch the video where I compared the ST2 Pro to SonarWorks, and I talked about what I was hearing in the room and the sound differences between those 2 products and what room correction can do for you. I've said it in that video. I've even posted some videos since that time with clients that wrote me emails since I started mixing with the Trinnov, on how the mix is translated so much better and all of that stuff. You can go back and I'll link everything in the description box. You can check out all those videos, but I will say, if you're someone, especially if you do mixing for a living or even a part-time living or a part-time gig, this is the best investment you could possibly make in your studio. It is by far the best piece of gear I've ever bought in this studio. If you're someone, even if you're working all in the box, if you're mixing with monitors in a room, okay, whether you have all the acoustic treatment in the world or you have bare bones acoustic treatment, the Trinnov is something you really want to consider. It is head and shoulders above something like SonarWorks, and we'll get in future videos what all those differences are, but the algorithm and the room correction does things that the SonarWorks doesn't do, things like phase alignment, things like that, which is huge, okay? So you definitely want to. So if you're someone who has a console and if you have racks of hardware, because I've had people tell me, you know, geez, this is, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 versus $300. I can't justify that cost. And then I look at their studio and they have, you know, almost as much gear as I do. They probably got $10,000 or $20,000 worth of hardware. If you have racks of hardware in your system, then you're probably in the budget where if you could spend $3,000 on a stereo bus compressor, you could find a way to put a Trinnov in your mix room. I'm telling you, it's the best money I've ever spent, okay? And no, you can go back and watch all those old videos. So I think it's something that's really cool, and I think the Nova is a huge upgrade to the ST2 Pro for all the reasons I talked about. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, come back and check out the other videos. I will probably put a playlist together for the Nova in and of itself, so as we're building videos, it's in one nice playlist for you. And again, and if you have any questions at all about anything about this Trinnov system, leave them in the comments below, because I'm going to gather up those questions and we're going to get it with Antoine, and we're going to do a Q&A video to try to answer all of your questions before that live stream. So until the next video where we actually install the Nova, I've been Dave with Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com. Again, thank you so much for watching me, everybody, and I'll see you guys in the next video.